Revenge Girls Stories.
My name is Elizabeth, and I am 32 years old. As a successful photographer now, it's hard to believe I was once disowned for being the ugly high school grad in a family obsessed with appearances. When I heard my sister Anaria was getting married, I made a decision that would change everything. After 10 years of silence, I showed up uninvited. The moment the handsome groom looked at me and asked, "You know her?" I smiled and replied, "More than you think." Before I dive into this heartbreaking family story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button as we explore what happens when family values appearance over love. Growing up, Anaria and I were as close as sisters could be, despite our 2-year age difference. I remember braiding her hair when she was 7 and I was 9, sitting on our shared bedroom floor as sunlight streamed through lace curtains. We would giggle and tell secrets, dream about our futures, and promise to always be there for each other. Those were the golden days before appearance became the dividing line in our family. Our parents were what most would consider successful and attractive people. My father, Owen, was a prominent plastic surgeon whose client list included local celebrities and wealthy socialites. He had a perfect smile that he flashed in all the country club photos, salt and pepper hair, always precisely styled, and a wardrobe of tailored suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. My mother, Amanda, was a former local beauty queen who had never quite let go of her pageant days. She maintained her figure religiously, wore makeup even to get the mail, and spent more on beauty treatments than she did on groceries. The physical differences between Anaria and I became apparent early on. While my sister inherited our mother's slender frame, golden hair, and symmetrical features, I took after a distant aunt no one liked to talk about. By 11, I was already chubby with frizzy brown hair that refused to behave, glasses perched on my nose by 12, and acne arrived soon after as an unwelcomed 13th birthday present. Speaking of birthdays, I'll never forget my 13th. I had been so excited, thinking finally I was becoming a teenager. Maybe now my parents would see me differently. I remember sneaking downstairs to get a glass of water that night and hearing my parents talking in the kitchen. "What are we going to do about Elizabeth?" my father sighed, swirling his whiskey. "She's getting older and still hasn't grown into her looks." My mother's response cut deeper than any knife could. "I know, Owen. I keep hoping she'll thin out or we could fix her nose when she's 16. It's just so hard when Anaria is so naturally beautiful. And Elizabeth, well, she tries, I suppose." I stood frozen in the hallway, glass of water forgotten, as my parents continued discussing my appearance like I was a problem to be fixed. That night, I cried myself to sleep, wondering why being smart wasn't enough for them. As the years progressed, the disparity in how my parents treated us became impossible to ignore. For Anaria, they spared no expense. Dance lessons, modeling classes, expensive clothes, and constant praise. "You could be on magazine covers," my mother would gush, while helping Anaria prepare for school photos. For me, there were academic achievements that went uncelebrated, music lessons they reluctantly paid for but never attended performances, and clothes bought on sale with minimal consideration for style. "As long as it fits," my father would say dismissively. I retreated into myself, finding solace in books and studies. My grades were perfect, my teachers loved me, but none of that seemed to matter at home. I became the invisible daughter, watching from the sidelines as Anaria became the trophy child. The Christmas I was 15 was particularly painful. We were taking the annual family portrait for the holiday cards when my father suddenly frowned. "Amanda, maybe we should just use the photo of Aneria from her recital, he suggested. The family shot isn't quite harmonious. My mother nodded in agreement. Yes, that one is stunning. Elizabeth, you understand, right? We want the card to be perfect. I was erased from the family Christmas card that year because I ruined the aesthetic. When the cards arrived, it was just my parents and Aneria smiling in perfectly coordinated outfits, with the message about our perfect family. I was a footnote, an imperfection to be edited out. As Aneria entered her teen years, our relationship deteriorated. The sister who once shared secrets with me became distant, absorbed into our parents' world of appearances. She began to echo their sentiments, sometimes unintentionally. "You'd look so much better if you just tried harder, Elizabeth," she would say, attempting to help me with makeup I had no interest in wearing. I watched as my sweet little sister transformed into a mini version of our parents, obsessed with how things looked rather than how they felt. And the worst part was, I couldn't even hate her for it. She was merely becoming what our parents had raised her to be. Senior year of high school should have been my triumph. Years of dedication to academics had paid off, and I was awarded the prestigious National Merit Scholarship. The award ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday evening in March. When I told my parents, my father checked his calendar and frowned. "That's the same night as Aneria's regional beauty pageant," he said, not even bothering to look up. "It's a stepping stone to the state competition." "But this scholarship means I can go to any college without financial burden," I explained, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. My mother patted my hand condescendingly. "That's wonderful, dear. Perhaps you could ask a friend's parent to take some pictures for us." They didn't even consider splitting up, one parent at each event. Both attended Aneria's pageant, while I sat alone at a table meant for family, accepting my award with a forced smile and hollow congratulations from teachers who whispered about my absent parents. The prom situation was no better. I had been asked by Eric, a boy from my advanced placement chemistry class. He was kind, intelligent, and actually seemed to like me for my personality. I spent weeks gathering courage to shop for a dress with my mother, who reluctantly agreed. "We'll need to find something slimming," she commented as we entered the store. "Dark colors would be best, and perhaps a shawl for your shoulders." 2 hours and dozens of critical comments later, I had a simple black dress that my mother deemed acceptable. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was the only choice she approved. The night of prom, Eric called an hour before he was supposed to pick me up. His voice sounded strained. "I can't make it tonight, Elizabeth. I'm really sorry." Later, I discovered from a friend that Aneria had spoken to him earlier that day. She had mentioned how socially awkward I was and implied that I had only been asked out of pity. Whether she did this intentionally or was just repeating things she'd heard our parents say, the damage was done. I sat in my acceptable black dress all night, watching Netflix and trying not to cry. Graduation day arrived, and I had earned valedictorian status. I worked tirelessly on my speech, hoping that maybe finally my parents would see my value. The morning of graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown for photos. "Couldn't you have done something with your hair?" my mother sighed. "And those glasses. Couldn't you wear contacts just for today?" "I tried contacts. I'm allergic to them." My father looked me up and down. "Well, at least the gown covers everything. I suppose we'll need to get some photos." The few pictures they took were perfunctory, nothing like the elaborate photo shoot they had arranged for Aneria's junior prom just a month earlier. In each photo, my mother stood slightly angled away from me, as if trying to distance herself. After the ceremony, during which I delivered my speech to a standing ovation from everyone except my own family, we went to a restaurant for a graduation lunch. My father spent most of the meal on his phone, while my mother picked at her salad and made occasional comments about my appearance. "Thank God you're going to college," she said after her second glass of wine. "Perhaps they can fix you up a bit. You know, colleges have excellent gyms these days." Something snapped inside me. 4 years of high school excellence culminating in a full scholarship and valedictorian status. And all she could think about was how the college gym might fix me? "What exactly needs fixing, Mother?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. She looked startled, not used to me pushing back. "Well, you know, your overall presentation. First impressions are everything, Elizabeth." My first impression got me a full scholarship. My first impression earned me the top spot in my class. My first impression has teachers writing recommendation letters calling me brilliant and insightful. But none of that matters to you and Dad, does it? Because I don't look like Aneria? My father finally looked up from his phone. "Don't be dramatic, Elizabeth. We're proud of your academic achievements, but in the real world, appearances matter." "Only to shallow people," I replied. The table fell silent. My mother's face flushed with anger, and my father's jaw tightened. Aneria stared at her plate, unwilling to look at any of us.
"You will not speak to us that way," my father finally said. "We have given you everything, a good home, education, opportunities." "Everything except acceptance," I interrupted. "Everything except love that doesn't come with conditions." That night, the argument continued at home. Words were hurled like weapons, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "You've always been ungrateful," my mother accused. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No, you wanted me to be someone else, someone I'm not." My father, red-faced and furious, finally delivered the ultimatum. "If you're so unhappy with our parenting, with our values, then perhaps it's time we discussed your future. I have colleagues who can help with your issues. A nose job, some liposuction, perhaps orthodontic work. We're willing to invest in these improvements before you start college." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "You want to surgically alter me before you can accept me?" "We want to help you reach your potential," my mother interjected. I looked at Aneria, hoping for support, but she sat silently, eyes downcast. She was 16 then, already molded into their image of perfection, already lost to me. "No," I said finally. "I won't change my appearance to meet your shallow standards, and I won't stay where I'm only valued for how I look." My father's face hardened. "Then perhaps you should find somewhere else to live if you can't respect our values, our home." "Owen," my mother gasped, but there was no real protest in her voice. That night, I packed a single suitcase with clothes and necessities. My father handed me $500, his expression cold. "This should get you started. Your scholarship covers housing, I believe." My mother stood in the doorway, torn between her husband's decision and maternal instinct. In the end, appearances won out, as they always did. "When you're ready to be reasonable, to understand what we're trying to do for you, you can come home," she said, as if offering a generous compromise. My father's parting words still echo in my ears a decade later. "Until then, you're not our daughter anymore." I walked out that door with $500, one suitcase, and a heart shattered into pieces. Behind me, I left the family bound by appearances, a sister too afraid to speak up, and the last remnants of my childhood. New York City greeted me with indifference, a sprawling metropolis too busy to notice one more broken person seeking refuge. I arrived 3 weeks before my freshman year at Columbia would begin, thanks to the scholarship my parents had dismissed so easily. With limited funds, I found the tiny apartment in Washington Heights to share with 2 other students, Julia and Maya, who needed a third roommate to make rent manageable. The apartment was nothing like the spacious suburban home I had left behind.
Our shared bathroom had perpetually peeling paint. The kitchen was barely large enough for one person to cook, and my bedroom was essentially a converted closet with just enough space for a twin mattress and a small desk. But it was mine, free from judgment and conditional love. Those first months, I worked everywhere I could. Mornings at a coffee shop near campus, evenings waiting tables at a diner, weekends restocking at a bookstore. Sleep became a luxury as I juggled multiple jobs with a full course load, determined to prove I could survive, thrive even, without my family's support. It was at the bookstore where I met Henry. In his 70s, with a shock of white hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers, Henry ran the photography section. He caught me one day, exhausted from a double shift, flipping through a book of portrait photography. "You have a good eye," he commented, watching as I lingered over certain images. "You see past the surface." Something in his kind observation broke through the walls I had been building. Within weeks, Henry had become the first person in my new life to truly see me. I learned that he was a retired photographer who had documented everything from war zones to celebrity portraits. When he offered me a position as his assistant for a small private project, I leaped at the chance. "I need young eyes and a fresh perspective," he explained, though I suspect now he simply recognized a wounded soul in need of mentorship. Henry taught me photography, but more importantly, he taught me to see beauty in the unpolished, the real, the authentic. "Anyone can capture perfection," he would say, adjusting my lens. "The true artist captures truth." Under his guidance, I began to view the world differently, including myself. Slowly, my appearance changed, but not through the surgical interventions my father had suggested. Regular meals shared with friends replaced the stress-induced eating habits of my youth. Walking miles across New York each day toned my body naturally. Fresh air and freedom cleared my skin. The changes came not from a desperate need to conform, but from finally caring for myself properly. By sophomore year, I had developed my own photographic style, focusing on capturing people in their most authentic moments. My first subjects were Julia and Maya, then friends from classes, then strangers willing to sit for a student photographer. Through my lens, I could show people their genuine beauty, the kind my parents had never been able to see. My first recognition came when one of my photographs was selected for a university publication. It was a simple shot of an elderly woman feeding pigeons in Washington Square Park, her face lined with wrinkles that told stories of decades lived fully. The image caught the attention of one of my professors, who encouraged me to submit work to a small gallery showing student work. While building my portfolio, I was also building a new family. Henry became the father figure I needed, offering wisdom without judgment. Sophia, a fierce art history major I met in my junior year, became the sister of my heart, protective and honest in equal measure. My roommates and a small circle of artists formed a support network based on genuine connection rather than obligation. It was through this circle that I met Aaron, my first real relationship. A film student with perpetually tasseled hair and an infectious laugh, saw beauty in imperfection and art in authenticity. When he first kissed me, I pulled back, years of ingrained insecurity surfacing. "Why me?" I asked, genuinely confused. You could be with anyone." He looked equally confused. "Because you see the world in a way no one else does. Because your laugh makes me happy. Because when you talk about photography, your entire face lights up." He touched my cheek gently. "Because you're beautiful, Elizabeth, in ways that matter." For the first time, I was valued for who I was, not how I looked or what I could become with improvements. Though Aaron and I eventually parted ways romantically after graduation, He had helped me rebuild my sense of self-worth in ways I'll always be grateful for. My junior year brought the opportunity for my first small exhibition, a series I titled Imperfect Beauty. Using natural light and minimal editing, I photographed a diverse group of women, highlighting the features they had been told to hide. Stretch marks, scars, wrinkles, asymmetrical features, all captured with dignity and grace. The exhibition was small, housed in a coffee shop gallery space, but the response was overwhelming. "You made me look powerful," one subject told me, tears in her eyes as she stared at her portrait. That night, surrounded by images celebrating authentic beauty and friends celebrating my achievement, I realized I had created something my family could never understand, a life where worth wasn't measured by appearance. By the time I graduated, I had secured a position as an assistant to a well-known portrait photographer, continued building my portfolio, and moved into a tiny studio apartment of my own in Brooklyn. It was barely 400 square feet, but every inch was mine, decorated with photographs and memories of my new life. On particularly difficult nights, I would sometimes think about Aneria, wondering what kind of woman she was becoming under our parents' influence. I had tried to reach out once, sending a carefully worded email to her high school address, but received no response. Whether she ignored me or never received it, I couldn't know. Eventually, I stopped reaching back toward a family that had deemed me unworthy. Instead, I looked forward, building a life and career based on the very values my family had rejected: authenticity, acceptance, and the beauty found in truth. 5 years after walking out of my childhood home, I had transformed from a discarded daughter into a recognized name in artistic photography. My signature style, capturing unfiltered humanity, had attracted attention from galleries and publications focused on challenging beauty standards. I had a small but beautiful studio in Manhattan now, where clients came specifically for my ability to show them as they truly were. My most successful project to date had been a series called Real Women, featuring 100 women of all ages, sizes, and backgrounds, photographed without makeup, without digital manipulation, without artifice of any kind. The series had been featured in several major art magazines and had a waiting list of women wanting to participate in the next phase. "You showed me as I actually am," one client wrote, feeling first time I might be enough just as I am. Words like these healed parts of me I hadn't realized were still broken.
Each time someone found value in their authentic self through my work, a little more of my own childhood pain faded. Professionally, I had contracts with progressive fashion magazines, tired of the industry's reliance on impossible standards. My work had been exhibited in galleries across New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. Financially, I was stable, able to pay my bills and even save for the future, something that had seemed impossible during those first desperate months in the city. My personal life had settled too. After several relationships that taught me different lessons about love and worth, I had been with Thomas for nearly 2 years. A thoughtful architect who approached buildings the way I approach photography, seeing beauty and functionality and authenticity and purpose. He understood my history, had held me through nightmares about my family, and never once suggested I needed to change anything about myself. "You're perfectly Elizabeth," he would say, and that's exactly right. On a crisp fall afternoon, I received an email from my Uncle Jordan, my father's younger brother and the only family member who had maintained any contact over the years. Jordan had always been the black sheep of the family himself, choosing a career in education over more lucrative options, marrying for love rather than status. He understood my exile in ways others couldn't. "Aneria is getting married," the email read simply. "Thought you should know. November 12th at the Lakeside Resort. Her fiancé's name is Maxim Weston." I stared at the screen for a long time, unexpected emotions swirling. Aneria would be 26 now, no longer the teenage sister I had left behind.
I had no idea what she'd become, whether she had fully embraced our parents' values or found her own path. Part of me wanted to ignore the information, to protect the life I had built, but curiosity tugged persistently. A quick internet search revealed Maxim Weston was a successful entrepreneur who had started a technology company focused on educational software. His family was well established in Boston's social circles, old money with new ideas. His company had been profiled in business magazines where he spoke about authentic innovation and meaningful technology. He seemed, at least from public information, like someone with substance. What caught my attention, however, was a quote in one of the articles. When asked about influences, Maxim had mentioned an exhibition of photography that had changed his perspective on authenticity in business. The exhibition was mine, though he didn't name me directly. The coincidence seemed too significant to ignore. That evening, I showed the information to Thomas and Sophia over dinner in our apartment. "So, your sister is marrying a man who admired your work without knowing the connection," Sophia summarized, twirling pasta on her fork. "That's some serious cosmic joke." Thomas was more cautious. "Are you considering going? After everything they did?" I looked out the window at the New York skyline, considering the question. I don't know. Part of me wants to see who Aneria has become. Part of me wants them to see who I've become without their improvements. And yes, a small, petty part wants them to know that this man they surely approve of appreciates my work. "Revenge served at room temperature at a wedding," Sophia smirked. "I like it." Thomas squeezed my hand. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Just be sure you're going for the right reasons, not just to reopen old wounds." Over the next week, I contemplated what attending would mean. I hadn't seen my family in a decade. I had built a life without them, healed without them, succeeded without them. Did I need their recognition now? Would seeing them set me back? In the end, curiosity won out. I RSVP'd not to the formal invitation I never received, but to Uncle Jordan, who promised to keep my attendance a secret. I chose a dress that was elegant but comfortable, in a deep emerald that complemented my now healthy figure rather than hiding it. I selected a wedding gift with special meaning, a beautifully framed photograph of two sisters I had captured in Central Park, their faces alike with genuine joy as they leaned against each other. And I prepared myself emotionally for whatever might come, knowing that regardless of their reaction, I was returning not as the discarded daughter desperate for approval, but as a woman secure in her own worth. The journey to the wedding venue gave me time to reflect on the decade that had passed. I thought about the girl who had left home with $500 and a broken heart, and the woman who was returning with a successful career and genuine relationships. The transformation hadn't been easy, but it had been real. I remembered the first time a client cried looking at their portrait, seeing themselves through my lens. "You made me beautiful," she had whispered. But I hadn't made her beautiful. I had simply shown her the beauty that was already there, the beauty my own family had been unable or unwilling to see in me. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Remember, you're not going to prove anything to them. You've already proven everything to yourself." He was right. This wasn't about validation from people who had rejected me. It was about closure, about seeing who they had become in my absence, and perhaps about giving them a chance to see who I had become despite their rejection. As the train pulled into the station nearest the resort, I took a deep breath. 10 years of growth, healing, and success had led to this moment. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it as the woman I had become, not the girl they had tried to change.
The wedding was scheduled for 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the reception to follow. I arrived at the ceremony site at 3:30, deliberately timing my entrance to avoid the receiving line. From a discreet position at the back of the gathering guests, I observed the scene unfolding before me. The first familiar face I spotted was my father. 10 years had aged him significantly. His once perfectly dyed hair now genuinely silver. His face lined despite what I suspected were regular treatments. He looked distinguished still, but there was a tightness around his eyes that spoke of stress or dissatisfaction. My mother was a study in preserved beauty.
her face surprisingly smooth for a woman in her 60s, her figure maintained through what I assumed was rigorous diet and exercise. They stood together greeting guests, the perfect picture of proud parents, but something about their smiles seemed practiced rather than genuine. I scanned the crowd for an area but didn't immediately see her, likely sequestered in some bridal preparation room. Instead, I recognized cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends, all dressed impeccably, all part of the world I had left behind. Some I had fond memories of, others had been complicit in my family's appearance-based value system. None appeared to recognize me. The ugly duckling transformed not into a swan, but into a woman comfortable in her own feathers. Uncle Jordan spotted me first, breaking away from a conversation to approach me with a warm smile. At 62, he looked more naturally aged than my father, his face weathered by years of outdoor activities and genuine laughter. "Elizabeth," he said softly, embracing me, "you look wonderful, not because of anything superficial, but because you look happy." His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for telling me about this and for being the one person who never forgot I existed. He squeezed my hand. They tried to erase you from family photos, but they could never erase you from family reality. Aneria asks about you, Not directly, but I can tell she wonders. This surprised me. She never reached out. "Fear is a powerful thing," he replied cryptically. "The ceremony is about to begin. Are you ready for this?" I nodded, though, in truth, I wasn't sure anyone could be ready to face the family that had discarded them after a decade of silence. We took seats near the back as guests began to settle into their chairs. The setting was undeniably beautiful, with the lake providing a stunning backdrop to the floral arch where vows would be exchanged. Everything was white and gold, elegant but safe choices that spoke of traditional taste rather than personal expression. My father walked past our row without noticing me, his focus entirely on his role as father of the bride. My mother followed moments later, escorted by a young usher, her champagne-colored dress clearly designer and perfectly fitted to her maintained figure. She glanced our way briefly but showed no sign of recognition, her eyes sliding past me as if I were just another wedding guest. The music began, a string quartet playing classical selections. The groomsmen and bridesmaids processed in pairs, followed by the best man. And then, there he was, Maxim Weston, the groom, standing tall and confident at the altar. He was handsome in a genuine way, with kind eyes and a smile that looked nervous but sincere. I tried to imagine him viewing my photography exhibition, wondering what he had taken from it. Then the music changed and all attention turned to the back of the aisle. My breath caught as Aneria appeared on our father's arm. She was beautiful, there was no denying that, but not in the way I remembered. Her features seemed somehow different, more pronounced, her nose slightly smaller, her lips fuller. I recognized the subtle signs of the improvements our father had so readily offered to me. Had she accepted them willingly, or had they been presented as necessities rather than options? Despite these changes, when she smiled, I caught a glimpse of the little sister I had once braided hair for, the girl who had shared secrets with me before appearances became our dividing line. Something in my heart ached for the relationship we had lost, for the women we might have been to each other in a different family. The ceremony itself was brief and traditional. Vows were exchanged, rings presented, a kiss shared. Throughout, I watched not just Aneria and Maxim, but my parents' reactions. They beamed with pride, but I noticed my mother's eyes constantly scanning the crowd, assessing how the event was being received. Even in this moment of supposed joy, appearances mattered most. As the newlyweds recessed down the aisle, I slipped out of my row and made my way towards the reception area, wanting to position myself strategically. The cocktail hour would be held on the terrace overlooking the lake, giving guests time to mingle while the wedding party took photographs. It was during this transition that I planned to make my presence known. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and found a quiet corner from which to observe. Guests chatted animatedly, complimenting the ceremony, the bride's beauty, the picturesque setting. I heard my mother's name mentioned frequently, always in relation to how perfectly she had orchestrated the event or how amazing she looked for her age. After about 20 minutes, I spotted Maxim entering the terrace alone, momentarily separated from the wedding party. This was my opportunity. Taking a deep breath, I approached him, champagne glass in hand. "Congratulations," I offered with a genuine smile. He turned, his expression open and friendly. "Thank you. I'm sorry, have we met? There are so many guests from an area side I haven't had the chance to meet yet." "No, we haven't officially met, but I believe you might be familiar with my work, a photography exhibition about authentic beauty." His eyes widened in recognition. Yes, that exhibition changed how I approached my entire business model. The authenticity in those images was revolutionary. "Wait, you're that photographer? Elizabeth?" His voice trailed off as he made the connection to the last name. I smiled, taking a small sip of champagne. "You seem to be putting the pieces together." "You know Aneria?" he asked, confusion evident in his expression. I met his gaze directly, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "More than you think." Before he could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught our attention. Aneria had entered, now changed from her ceremony gown into a reception dress. She was scanning the crowd, probably looking for her new husband. When her eyes found us, her expression froze. A complex mixture of shock, recognition, and something else I couldn't quite identify flickering across her face. In that moment, as she began moving towards us with increasing urgency, I knew that whatever happened next would irrevocably change the careful narrative my family had constructed in my absence. The 10 years of separation were about to collapse into this single moment of truth.
"Maxim?" Aneria called, her voice higher than normal as she rushed toward us. "I see you've met one of our guests." Her eyes never left my face as she approached, a storm of emotions playing across her features. Recognition, shock, fear, and something that might have been shame all competed for dominance. She looked exactly as I would expect someone to look when confronted with a ghost they had helped banish. Maxim smiled, oblivious to the tension. "Yes, and it's amazing. She's the photographer I told you about, the one whose exhibition influenced my approach to authenticity in business. I had no idea she was related to you." Aneria's face paled slightly. "Related?" "Yes," I said, my voice calm despite my racing heart. "I'm Aneria's sister." Maxim's expression shifted from pleased to confused. "Sister? But Aneria told me she was an only child." The moment hung between us, heavy with 10 years of silence and secrets. Aneria's eyes darted frantically between Maxim and me, her perfectly manicured hands clutching her champagne glass so tightly I feared it might shatter. "I can explain," she began, but was interrupted by my mother's voice cutting through the moment. "Aneria, darling, the photographer needs you and Maxim for the sunset photos by the lake." My mother froze mid-stride as she spotted me, her practiced smile faltering. "What are you doing here?" My father appeared beside her, his expression hardening as recognition dawned. "This is a private event. You weren't invited." Maxim looked between us all, confusion turning to concern. "What's going on, Owen, Amanda? This is the photographer I was telling you about, the one whose work on authentic beauty I admire so much." "She's also apparently my sister," Aneria said quietly, finally finding her voice. "The one I never told you about."
The stillness that followed was absolute. Nearby guests began to notice the tension, conversations quieting as attention turned to our small group. My father, ever conscious of appearances, forced a tight smile. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion somewhere more private," he suggested, though it was clearly not a suggestion but a command. Minutes later, we were sequestered in a small sitting room off the main reception hall. Maxim stood by the window, his expression troubled as he watched his new wife pace nervously. My parents stood together, a united front as always, while I remained near the door, not quite part of the circle they formed. "You told me you were an only child," Maxim said to Aniria, his voice careful but firm. "For 3 years, through all our conversations about family, meeting your parents dozens of times, planning this wedding, you never once mentioned having a sister." Anaria's face paled slightly. "It's complicated, Maxim." "Uncomplicated," he replied. "I decided to help her. I left home 10 years ago. Or more accurately, I was asked to leave because I refused to surgically alter my appearance to meet my family's standards of beauty." My mother made a small, disapproving sound. "That's a gross oversimplification of what happened." "Is it?" I challenged, years of suppressed anger finally finding voice. "You and Dad gave me an ultimatum after my high school graduation: fix my appearance through plastic surgery or leave. When I chose self-acceptance over self-mutilation, Dad said I was no longer his daughter." Maxim's expression darkened as he turned to my father. "Is this true?" My father straightened his already perfect posture. "You don't understand our family dynamics. Elizabeth was rebellious, ungrateful for the opportunities we offered her." "Opportunities?" I repeated. "You mean the opportunity to let a surgeon break my nose and reshape it? The opportunity to have fat suctioned from my body? The opportunity to become someone other than myself in order to earn your love?" "We only wanted what was best for you," and my mother interjected, her voice taking on the martyred tone I remembered so well. "In this world, appearance matters. We were trying to help you succeed." "I have succeeded," I replied evenly. "I have a thriving career doing work I love. I have real friends who value me for who I am, not how I look. I have built a life based on authenticity rather than appearances." Maxim turned to Aniria, who had been uncharacteristically quiet. "So you lied to me for our entire relationship. You pretended you didn't have a sister because what? It was uncomfortable to explain? You were ashamed of how your family treated her." "I didn't know how to tell you," Aniria admitted. "The longer I waited, the harder it became. And then you talked about admiring that photographer who captures authentic beauty, and I saw her name in one of your articles, and I realized it was Elizabeth, and I panicked." My father stepped forward, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Maxim, son, every family has its complications. This is hardly the time or place to air them. You and Aniria have just taken your vows. Guests are waiting. The photographer is ready for sunset pictures." Maxim looked at him with newfound assessment in his eyes. "With all due respect, Owen, I just discovered my wife has been lying to me about something fundamental. That the family I thought I was marrying into is capable of disowning their own daughter for not meeting their aesthetic standards. I think that warrants a pause in the festivities." My mother made a distressed sound. "This is exactly why we didn't want to involve Elizabeth. She's always been difficult, always caused scenes." The unfairness of this accusation after a decade of silence struck me like a physical blow. "I've been entirely absent from your lives for 10 years, by your choice, not mine. What scenes could I possibly have caused?" "You're causing one now," she hissed. "By existing? By refusing to remain erased?" Maxim turned to me, his expression thoughtful. Why did you come today, after all this time? After how they treated you? It was a fair question, one I had asked myself repeatedly during the journey here. Partly curiosity, I admitted, partly closure, and partly because I thought it was time my family saw that rejecting me didn't destroy me, that I built something beautiful from their rejection. Anaria moved toward me, stopping just short of reaching out. I did try to call you once. About 3 years ago, the number I had was disconnected. I changed my number after college. Uncle Jordan has always had my contact information. He would have shared it if you had asked. The implication hung in the air. She hadn't really tried that hard to find me. Maxim took a deep breath. I need to think, and we need to address our guests. I can't pretend everything is fine when I've just discovered my new wife has been hiding the existence of her sister, and that her parents disowned that sister for refusing cosmetic surgery. He looked at each of us in turn. I need to understand who exactly I've married and what family I've just become part of. My father drew himself up, affronted. You're overreacting. This is ancient history. No, I said quietly. It's the present. It's who you are, who you've always been. People who value appearance over substance, image over reality, social standing over family loyalty. That's not fair, my mother protested. I looked at her directly. What's not fair is telling a teenage girl she's only valuable if she surgically alters her appearance. What's not fair is erasing a daughter from family photos because she doesn't fit your aesthetic. What's not fair is standing silent while your husband disowns your child. The room fell silent, the weight of truth finally spoken aloud, pressing down on all of us. Maxim moved to the door, his decision apparently made. I'm going to speak with my best man and the events coordinator. We need to delay the reception slightly. I think it's best if we all take some time to collect ourselves. He paused, looking directly at Anaria. And then we need to talk, really talk, about what kind of marriage and what kind of life we're going to build together. As he left, the four of us remained. The original family unit now fractured beyond recognition, forced to confront the broken pieces we had each contributed to creating. When we finally emerged from that room, the reception was in a state of suspended animation. Guests clustered in small groups, whispering behind hands and cocktail glasses. The string quartet played softly in the background, but the dance floor remained empty. The perfect wedding my mother had orchestrated was unraveling, and for once, appearances couldn't be maintained. Maxim stood near the head table, conferring with his best man and a flustered-looking wedding coordinator. When he saw us, he straightened and approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the circumstances, "I apologize for the delay. We're experiencing a family situation that requires our attention. Please continue to enjoy the excellent food and drinks, and we'll resume the formal reception activities shortly." The murmurs intensified as guests tried to decipher what was happening. My mother moved quickly through the crowd, damage control in her designer heels, offering vague explanations about minor logistical issues. My father headed straight for the bar, while Anaria stood frozen, her carefully applied makeup now streaked with tears she had hastily tried to repair. I found myself beside Uncle Jordan again, his steady presence a comfort in the chaos. "Not quite the reunion you imagined?" he asked gently. "Actually, the emotional upheaval is exactly what I imagined, though I didn't intend to disrupt the entire wedding." He squeezed my shoulder. "Sometimes healing requires a little disruption. The question is, what happens now?" What happened next was entirely unexpected. Maxim returned to the microphone after consulting with Anaria, who now stood beside him, her hand clasped tightly in his. Thank you all for your patience. Today has been full of surprises, some joyful, others challenging. Anaria and I have just had a revelation about family, truth, and the foundations we want to build our marriage upon. He looked at Anaria, who nodded slightly before taking the microphone herself. Her voice trembled, but gained strength as she spoke. Many of you know me as an only child. That's not true. I have a sister, Elizabeth. Due to family circumstances I'm not proud of, we've been estranged for 10 years. Her presence here today is unexpected, but important. Before we celebrate our new family, Maxim and I need to acknowledge the truth about my existing one. A collective intake of breath swept through the room as all eyes turned to me. I felt exposed, spotlighted in a way that the shy, insecure teenager I once was would have found unbearable. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Elizabeth, Anaria continued, would you join us? As I made my way to the front of the room, I passed my parents. My father's face was flushed with anger or embarrassment, perhaps both. My mother looked physically caned, her worst nightmare of public imperfection unfolding before her meticulously selected guests. When I reached Anaria and Maxim, my sister did something that shocked me completely. She embraced me, clinging tightly as if afraid I might disappear again. I'm so sorry, she whispered against my ear. I was a coward. Maxim stepped forward, addressing the confused guests. Family should be about love, acceptance, and truth. Today, we're choosing those values. We ask for your understanding as we take some time to reconnect and heal old wounds before continuing with our celebration. With that announcement, the formal reception was essentially paused. Some guests, clearly uncomfortable with the unscripted emotion, made polite excuses and departed. Others, particularly Maxim's family and friends, remained, their expressions reflecting respect for the difficult choice the couple had made. Anaria, Maxim, and I moved to a quiet corner of the terrace, joined moments later by Uncle Jordan. My parents, notably, remained distant. My mother now engaged in intense conversation with several departing guests. My father, still at the bar. I should have told you about Elizabeth, Anaria said to Maxim, her voice small. I was ashamed. Not of her, she added quickly, looking at me, of myself, of our family, of how easily I accepted what happened because it meant I remained the favorite. Why did you never reach out? I asked, the question that had lingered for a decade, even after you were adults, independent. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. At first, I believed what Mom and Dad said, that you had chosen to leave, that you were being dramatic and difficult. By the time I began to question their version of events, years had passed. I tried once, like I said, but when I couldn't reach you easily, I told myself it was too late, that you probably hated me anyway. I never hated you, I said truthfully. I was disappointed, hurt, but you were 16 when I left, still a child yourself, really. Maxim watched our exchange thoughtfully. Families are complicated, he observed, but lies are poison to any relationship, including marriage. I need to know this is the last secret, Anaria. She nodded, tears falling freely now. It is, and I promise no more pretending, no more perfect facade. As we talked, I noticed my father approaching, his expression now controlled, diplomatic. My mother followed reluctantly behind him. This display has gone on long enough, Elizabeth. You've made your point. Now, perhaps we can salvage what remains of this wedding. I looked at the man who had once been my father, really looked at him, and saw not the intimidating figure of my youth, but an aging man desperately clinging to illusions of control and perfection. The revelation was both sad and freeing. This isn't a display, I replied evenly. This is reality, breaking through the carefully constructed image you've maintained for decades. Your daughters are reconnecting despite your best efforts to erase one of us. My mother stepped forward, her voice low and urgent. Do you have any idea how this looks? Half the guests have left. The Westons must think we're dysfunctional. We are dysfunctional, Anaria said suddenly, surprising all of us. Mom, Dad, we are. We've pretended otherwise for so long. But look at us. Look at what we did to Elizabeth. Look at what we almost did to my marriage before it even began. All because appearances matter more than truth. My father's facade cracked slightly, genuine confusion showing through. We gave you everything, both of you, the best opportunities, the best advantages. How can you be so ungrateful? You gave us conditional love, I corrected. You taught us our value was in how we looked, not who we were. That's not everything. That's not even close to enough. Maxim cleared his throat. Owen, Amanda, I respect that you're my wife's parents, but I need you to understand something clearly. I fell in love with Anaria because beneath the polished exterior you created, I saw someone genuine, struggling to emerge. I want to build a life with that person, not with an illusion. And that life will include her sister, if Elizabeth is willing. He turned to me. I admired your work before I knew who you were. The truth and authenticity in your photography showed me what was missing in my business and in my life. I would be honored to know the artist behind that vision. His words, so unexpected and genuine, brought tears to my eyes. For the first time since arriving at the wedding, I felt a glimmer of hope that something positive might emerge from this confrontation. Anaria squeezed my hand. Can we start over? Not forget the past, but maybe build something new? Looking at her hopeful expression, I saw echoes of the little sister who had once shared secrets with me before appearances and parental expectations had driven us apart. I'd like that, I answered honestly. My parents exchanged glances, clearly outnumbered and outmaneuvered. My father straightened his tie, a nervous habit from my childhood. Well, it seems decisions have been made without us. As usual, Elizabeth manages to take center stage. This isn't about taking center stage, Uncle Jordan interjected, speaking up for the first time. This is about finally acknowledging a decade of wrong. Owen, Amanda, your daughters are offering you a chance at redemption here. I suggest you consider it carefully. As the sun set over the lake, casting golden light across the disrupted wedding venue, a photographer, ironically not me, captured an image that would come to symbolize this day. Anaria and I side by side, neither perfect, but both real, with Maxim standing supportively behind his new wife. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, stood my parents, their expressions a complex mixture of confusion, anger, and perhaps, just perhaps, the first glimmer of recognition that something in their value system might have been fundamentally flawed. The formal reception eventually resumed, though in a subdued and altered form. Many guests had departed, but those who remained witnessed something rare and valuable, authentic human connection breaking through years of carefully maintained appearances. As the night drew to a close, Anaria found me again. Will you be here tomorrow? Can we talk more? Yes, I promise. I'm not disappearing again. Life isn't about achieving perfection, but embracing authenticity. Beauty exists not in flawlessness, but in truth. And family, real family, isn't those who demand you change to earn their love, but those who love you because of who you truly are, imperfections and all. Have you ever had to choose between being accepted and being authentic? Between family expectations and your own truth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of healing and rediscovering family resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by their appearance. Thank you for witnessing my story. And remember, the most beautiful thing you can be is genuinely, unapologetically yourself.